Welcome everyone then to the consultation meeting, student consultation meeting to propose the closure of the community education course at Strathclyde. My name's Jill, for those of you who don't know me. I'm one of the vice presidents at the Students' Association and I'm chairing the meeting today. If we're okay, if we could just go through the people down the front, introduce yourselves and what role you play at the university, what your job is.
Hi there, I'm David Goldie. I'm the head of the School of Humanities. I'm not directly related to community education, but I'm a member of the faculty management team, which has made the decisions in this area.
I'm Lorna Deagle. I'm the faculty manager, and I'm also a member of the faculty management team.
I'm Tony Brewer. I'm the Dean of Hants.
I'm Donald Christie, head of the School of Education and a member of the faculty management team.
Okay, thank you. Today we are filming as well, just to let you know. I know a lot of people have childcare issues and work commitments as well, and they couldn't be here today. So we are filming on the camera down the front there, just so everyone's aware and comfortable with it. Just because I think it's quite worthwhile that we can feed back the answers to those individuals who can't be here, because we know that there's like quite a significant number of students who can't make it. So is everyone okay with that? If there's anyone who wants to speak that's not okay, then maybe you could ask someone else to ask a question, or if you want me to ask the question, I can do. And basically the format of today, we have approximately an hour, but I think everyone's quite keen that if everyone asks the questions that they have, just to make sure that we get through everything. But we'll take it just a simple question and answer session. If you have a question that you'd like to ask, just raise your hand. I'll note down everybody, and if there's many people, then we'll get back to you. I have some questions also from people who can't make it, so I'll be asking them throughout it as well. I think we had, first off, someone who wanted to make an opening.
Can I just, if it's all right, can I just say something?
Yeah, of course.
Because I think it's quite important in relation to how you framed it.
Yeah, go ahead.
The way we see this is that this is part of the formal consultation process. So I think we would like questions, and we can try and respond to those questions. But also, I think if you've got statements or other points that you want to make, what we want to do with this is gather this together and take it back to the academic development group, which is looking at these proposals. So this is actually a genuine consultation. Some of the questions we may not be able to answer because they may presume, if you like, various information and so on. So what I would like is, if you've got statements or whatever, because I know that this is a very, very crucial issue for you. You've invested a lot in this course and so on, so we actually want to hear what you have to say. So I think just really to kind of preface the context of this.
Thanks.
I'd just like to open this, and just before we begin, I think all of us would just like to raise the point of just the appropriateness of the timing of this meeting. A lot of us are trying to study for assignments, some people are out in placement and other things like that. We're all under pressure. So obviously this isn't a representation of all of us who care about this issue. There's a lot more people who who wanted to be here but just can't actually be here. And then obviously the weather, which like no one can help that, but that's just another side note just to say there should be more people here that can't make it. Just a point about the room, like we're not very happy about this room. Like we wish we could have had a more engaging room. We're not used to this setup. None of our lecturers are ever in this lecture theatre. It's not somewhere that we're comfortable having this kind of discussion, so just please be aware of that. The overall consultation period is just 4 weeks, and we're only getting talked to about this now, and we think you could have engaged with us sooner than this. We just want to know how legitimate is this consultancy, and would really like you to hear everything we've got to say and just try and answer our questions that are really genuine questions.
Sure. Do you want me to?
No, it's just an opening.
Okay, right.
I'll start.
I'll ask the first question then. Specifically to yourself.
Yep.
My understanding is, well, we all know community education is specifically a Scottish
Yep.
subject. Your background is obviously Southampton. That's where you took your degree. That's where you've done most of your lecturing. What do you know about community education and the work it does? Because you obviously haven't been here, well, it's what, 8 months? It's a subject that it's hard enough for people who have been in Scotland for a long time to understand and to grasp the depth of. I don't see that in Strathclyde. I don't see the dean and the faculty understanding the importance of this course.
I think we understand the importance of that course, if you have a personal question to me, I think I understand the nature of community education. I understand the nature of its distinctive in Scotland, particularly as a profession, which it doesn't actually have in England, those same kind of professional connotations and so on. So I do understand the role that the community education courses in Scotland provide for community educators, for the profession of community education and youth studies and so on. And I think that, in a sense, that awareness was part of the discussions in the academic development group. So I wasn't on my own in that group. We were part of a larger group which included 3 heads of school, the Dean of Science, and I think within that context, I think we understood the particularities of community education in the same way as we understood the particularities of the other subject areas. In my own background at Southampton, I had a lot to do with social work. I had a social work department within my school, and although that's not directly comparable, there are some comparisons and so on. So I do understand the professional dimension behind community education. I understand that quite well. And I think that one of the things which has been very helpful so far in the consultation period is the responses we've had from professionals within the community, which have actually clarified and helped us to understand, if you like, some of the more specific things about community education in Scotland. So I think we do have a knowledge of it, but we're gaining a deeper knowledge of it, and I think that is about, if you like, the genuineness of the consultation exercise.
Part of me asks that because, and this came as a surprise to a couple of these guys, I'm not in the same cohort, I'm not in the same year as them. I have a number of friends who are social workers,
Yep.
and who trained 20, 30 years ago. And what they will tell you as social workers, their training encapsulated what we are taught as community educators. And I will guarantee that the Department of Social Work in this building don't understand that. They don't know that that was part of social work education to start with. They've moved away from that. We're the ones plugging the gap.
That's a fair point.
Has anyone else got any questions?
You wanted to ask a question relating to the suggestion that the research within community education isn't up to grade 4 standard or rate 4 standard. It was posed that the system you use to grade isn't actually suitable for community education, and how can you translate from one grading system to community education, which would require a different one, and how do you go through the process of saying, well, that's not up to the standard, when it's been suggested by other researchers that Strathclyde actually produces what they would use level 4?
I think that's a good question, and I think there are, if you like, there are 2 different kinds of research, and I think I should kind of preface the remarks by saying that what we looked at was, if you like, the collective research output of community education and the way in which they, if you like, staff have graded them. We're not making any comments about the professionalism of staff or the commitment of staff or the fact that they do research. I think there are 2 different kinds of research which go on within all universities, but particularly where there are professions are concerned. There's what you might call kind of practice-related research, which feeds into both teaching and feeds into practice. And then there's another aspect of research, which is in a sense where we, as academics, are graded, which is by our peers outside the university in the research, what is now the research excellence framework or the research selectivity exercise and so on. And in a sense, it's that latter, those standards, which we have to apply, because that's exactly what the university is judged on, and what all academics in Strathclyde are judged on. Now, within the professions, there are some issues here, but equally within the faculty, it's quite clear that within some professional areas, they're equally competent at both that practice research dimension and do that, as well as the RE research. And in a sense, we weren't commenting on practice research. I know, and from the communications I've had with practitioners in the field, in both youth studies and community education, that that's highly valued. But in a sense, that's not the standard by which we're being judged. And if the university is to improve its research performance, which is crucial, I think, to be in, if you like, a top university, then that's the standard that we have to assess.
So do you not think it would be fair then to give feedback to the people that are doing research and tell them, this is what we think is good, this is where you can improve? Because at the moment they don't seem to be getting any guidance as to how they can improve, where they're going wrong and how they can take steps to improve that. And that makes it incredibly, you wouldn't do that to students, give their essay back with that feedback and say you failed. You need the constructive criticism to take it forward.
Maybe I can comment on that. I was formerly obviously a member of the Faculty of Education before we merged with LAST to make Humanities and Social Sciences. So I've been involved in the research assessment exercise from the education perspective, and formerly the Community Education was located in the Department of Education and Professional Studies, and we had we've been through now as former Faculty of Education, we've been through 4 research exercises dating right back to the 90s. And I have to say, having been involved in that process as a former Vice Dean within the Faculty of Education, thinking about the period, for example, between 2001 and 2008, these research exercises happen on a kind of basis of about a 6-year cycle. And they are crucial to the university for all sorts of reasons. Partly from a simple perspective of funding for the university. The outcome of the research exercise determines how much funding is provided for universities in relation to their research activity. So the gradings that are received and the ratings of the research quality not only are about reputation, it's about hard financial kind of
So you
cash.
find it quite difficult because we've not actually got any information that you obviously have access to informed your opinions from.
But
so we don't know where your opinions have generated from, and it's
Right.
really hard to sit back and say, well, I know what you're talking about because I've seen it and I can understand where you're coming from.
I think
And
that's
I really don't think
it's a
that's
absolutely fair
because
point.
how can we even really make informed judgments when we don't even know where any of the information has come from?
Yeah, I mean, it is probably true. I mean, I'm sure it's true. That's an absolutely fair point. We don't perhaps talk enough about the importance of research and the way that research works nationally in the UK. And this is a picture that's been evolving over the last 15 years. But just to come back to your original point about feedback and so on, and people's awareness of the importance of that, I would have to say that in terms of the staff in the university, I mean, all staff have been aware of the importance of research in terms of the university's priorities. And this is not just something that's happened recently. This is something that goes back 15 years or more, and increasingly it's been a focus.
Do they actually have guidance
Oh,
that's been
absolutely.
given to them that says this is what you need to do to get to level 4 and it's achievable for that division of work?
Yeah, I mean, that has been part and parcel of the responsibility of departments in the former faculty and in the schools within the new faculty. It's been a duty on the heads of department and the people taking responsibility for research to set up mentoring processes and so on. All of that has been part of the policy and practice within the former faculty and is certainly the case in the current faculty.
I just want to provide a bit of context because I think it actually perfectly feeds in. I don't mean to take this over. But obviously I sat in MIG last year, so I did. The final MIG report, which was signed off by MIG, signed off by the faculty management team, signed off by Senate, signed off by Court, explicitly recommended that the Dean with the vice deans and appropriate faculty management staff, put together an operational plan with regular review and progress targets for research, and that fell out of an external assessor's report which said it actually had a very positive trajectory ahead. So was that operational plan put in place? If not, why not? Because that seems to fit in perfectly with the feedback that they were talking about in that research sense. So was that operational plan as signed off by Senate put in place? If not, why not? But if it was put in place, then surely actually that 2010, 2011 is not the year to do it. We should be looking forward to 2013 for the next submission, for 2015 actually, potentially even for the next ref. That it seems 2013. It seems if you're building on that feedback, that you use your feedback to build for the next session. You use your feedback in an essay to build for your next essay. So you use your feedback from RAE 2008 to build for REF 2013. So that's want to provide that context.
Well, community education, I believe, will be a part of the next REF, so is it not very short-sighted? I'm a PhD student who's going to finish in the next 2 months. There are 9 other PhD students within community education. I have a number of questions that come in the back of that about what happens to us actually, because I wonder whether our supervisors and our academics, when their department's going to be closed in 4 years, where the supervision will be for the continuing 8 PhD students when I leave. Not to mention, we'll get back to the impact of the part-time students. But I just think that is a really key point, that they're going to be a part of that anyway. So is it not incredibly short-sighted to not let community education have a chance and give them the time frame to be able to get up to the research standard required, as opposed to saying, they're not at the standard now and that's it. You know yourselves of the amount of staff that are going through PhD research. You know the amount of research that they do within the field. I myself, as I'm finishing in 2 months, have research articles ready to come out. Would I want to stay within this institution and do it here? I'm not sure. Maybe it would be better to go somewhere else who actually seem to support the field of work I'm doing, and crucially the young people that I'm working with in extremely deprived communities. So I just can't quite see, if that it's all focused on research, why you're not given that time and space to a department who have been given such a short time frame to try and change anything, when actually in the next 4 years there is time for them to engage with the RAF process and arguably make a huge commitment to this university. And it just seems very short-sighted that the decision has been taken prior to that. And also, why would people want to continue to do research if their department is definitely getting closed in 4 years? Why would they want to contribute any further?
I think those are interesting points. I think if we come to the question about trajectory and pace, it's actually a matter of pace. And I think, as Donald said, this goes back actually a long way. We're not simply talking about last year. In other words, within the university and within virtually all universities, the emphasis upon research and, if you like, what's required for research assessment exercises has been there for a long time. So this is not something which is particularly new. The assessor did say there was trajectory, but I think there's an issue here which is actually about pace. And I don't know whether you've actually seen the proposals or not. I don't know who has seen the proposals, because some have been made public, others are not public. So, I mean, have you seen the proposals?
The proposal for community education,
yeah,
I have, yeah.
So in that, it's actually about the pace of that trajectory.
Yeah.
And I think the issue here is that it's unlikely that the pace of that is going to actually have any impact on the 2013 REF. It's going to be much, much longer than that. And that is actually a very important issue in this context. So it's not actually about giving people limited time. It's actually about, if you like, the pace and the scale of that time, which is significant here.
But hasn't the pace of community education, like I believe in one of your last meetings there was graphs putting on every table to show how much community education has actually improved over the past couple of years. That is surely a positive trajectory, and we're moving at quite a high pace for a department who traditionally their focus has been engaging and working with the most deprived communities in Scotland. It hasn't necessarily been buying into huge multi-million pound pieces of research necessarily, but the pace is happening. There is more PhD students. The staff are engaging in research. This is happening.
I'm saying we're not denying that. That's actually recognised in the proposal. It's actually about the pace of it and when this is likely to be realised. And the fact that actually we've got a very small number of staff engaged in it. So I think there's a question here also about the proportion of staff, and I think that in that context, the university has certain expectations.
I'd like to come back to the operational plan though.
Yeah.
In order to determine that pace and that trajectory, was that operational plan put into place with the staff? And if not, why not?
Yeah, I think there were discussions with Howard, but I'm not sure, in a sense, where those discussions went, because I actually wasn't here at that point. So.
But you as dean should have the responsibility of knowing where things are at. You should know where you're at. You should know what the discussions were and what the outcome of the discussions were.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, in a sense, that those discussions took place before I
know, but
actually
you should
arrived.
still know what the outcome of them is, because that's you basically saying, I don't know where we are in that, so...
No, because I think that there were a whole set of processes put in place when I came, which were the development reviews and so on, which were embedding, if you like, some of those principles about, if you like, the quality of research which was necessary. Not simply, if you like, the amount, the quantity, but the quality of research which was necessary. And that was actually done at a divisional,
you should still
sectional
know
level.
what the standard is expected
I
from
think,
that
we
outcome.
Just to say that during the discussions in the ADG, the Academic Development Group, it's not that we didn't take any account of what was happening. We did get an update on the information that was existing at the time that Philip's referring to. We sought that information and had input to the process about as much as we could about the recent developments, as it were, and what the likely trajectory was going to be. But we're listening to the point you make, though. It's an important point you're making about information that has been collated, and clearly you made reference to the submission that was tabled at the board last week. The whole point about this process is that in the ADG, what we'll do at the end of the process is having got all of the information through this consultation period, including papers like that, and there'll be more, we hope, substantive papers of that kind. Then we can sit down with all that and look at all of the evidence and try to reach an informed position which is open to the new information being provided. So whatever process we've engaged in, we're not saying that we've reached a final decision and that's it. What we're saying is that this is a process of consultation, and we genuinely mean that. And as a member of the Academic Development Group, I can assure you that my role within that group will be to say, what is the information we now have? How does that change the argument? How does it make a case? And I mean, there'll be further submissions coming from each group, I'm sure, that will actually lay out alternatives perhaps, or whatever. But we will have to sit down and look at all of that information and try to make a well-informed decision about the future for the various groups involved in the context of what the faculty is trying to do. So, we are listening to these points, and we will be taking on board the information that's been provided, and supplementary information that has come to light through the process will be taken very seriously indeed.
And that's just to kind of reinforce the point about consultation being genuine.
I mean, I think the slides, I think you're right to, I mean, what you're suggesting that there hasn't been a sort of adequate oversight of the research and development of the researchers working in the community education area. I mean, a little bit of context setting, I think, is quite important to know that there is both faculty and university oversight that goes on. In the last year, every academic in the university has been subject to what they call a ref audit. So every area of the university is being given very close scrutiny, both by the faculty and through the vice deans of research and the university. Recently, we've been engaged in meetings with, at the vice principal level. The university wants to get the maximum research output. So it's not as if there haven't been discussions taking place all the way back, which are recorded, which are minuted, where people have set very clear goals. I mean, as an academic, it's one of the, actually, in some senses, we feel we're getting almost too much kind of scrutiny and too much guidance on this kind of thing. So there's a sort of sense of context. It's worth kind of knowing the difficult thing about this is that the information that's in the research audits can't be made general knowledge, because it's obviously sort of commercially sensitive and sensitive with our competitors and this kind of thing. But it's important to notice that there is a very, very robust, I think, mechanism for developing individual research and for a constant snapshot of where we are at the moment. This is taking place right across the university.
So that wouldn't just be the 4 subjects that are currently up
No.
for...
No, it's
No.
across the
But
whole university.
What I should explain, I'm a journalist. I spent 20 years as a journalist and as an editor, and I gave it up to move into community regeneration and decided I needed the academic background and gave that up and came here full time. And I look at this course and I look at the various journalism courses that Strathclyde offers, because it's not just one. And I'm curious to know, in terms of the journalism course, which seems a peculiar one to me as well, and actually in terms of research and everything else, I'm curious to know that how many of their staff are going to be submitting refs, how many of them sort of 3-4 star level.
I can speak for that because this is in my school. Every one of member of journalism staff at the moment is on the ref track for submitting.
3 or 4 star level.
It's difficult to know at the moment, but that's, I mean, not everyone is 3-4 star level. I think the university's aspiration is that half of the submissions in most areas are at the level of 3 stars at least, and that's, I think that's the intention. But in the journalism area, certainly there's the intention at the moment. Obviously, we've still got 2 years till the ref census date, but yeah.
Because
And some of it at very high, some of it already established at a very high level.
a member of staff is no longer here.
But
No, you can't submit members of staff who aren't here. We'll only be submitting members of staff who are here, and we do have submissions which, by our own ratings, certainly fit the 3 star rating.
Because, well, that would be the argument, though, that the community education isn't actually submitting articles to prestigious enough journals. And sort of, I suppose not just for the lecturers, but for us as well, it would be helpful to know what the staff should be targeting to satisfy the needs of the university.
This is part of the process that does take place. I mean, there are kind of things like journal ratings, which every academic member of staff knows what these journal ratings are. So there is, I mean, it's never entirely an objective rating, but there's a very clear sense of what are the A-rated journals, who are the A-rated publishers, and this is common knowledge in every subject area. Yes, yeah.
I think it's important here as well to say something about how ADG developed its work, because I think if you've seen the proposal, you've seen if you like, description of the process we went through, and we focused our initial cut around all those subjects which had been identified in the MIG report. The MIG report was the merger report of the 2 faculties, which identified a number of subjects which the new faculty would have to look at. And we also then identified all those subject areas which were in what's called quartile 4. It was the bottom quartile of the research results. Now, some of that overlapped, and community education was there because actually it had a very, very low submission rate to the last research exercise. So those were the areas then that we concentrated on, and not the other areas which by definition were in other quartiles of the research exercise. In other words, they had performed much better in the last research exercise. So that was, if you like, one of our, if you like, discriminating variables in the process that we went through. And that's laid out, I think, in the proposal as, if you like, the method, the methodology behind.
Is that really fair though to deem whether someone should stay or go because of their research though?
Well, I think this is about a broader set of strategic issues within the faculty, which you can agree with or we can disagree about, which is actually that the faculty has to establish where its priorities are. We cannot, in a sense, sustain everything at the same level. So we have to be able to invest And if we're going to invest, we have to invest in the strong areas. And the difficulty that we face as a faculty, in some senses, is actually establishing those priorities. And that, in a sense, is what the Academic Development Group has done, according to objective criteria.
Education is a high priority on the government's agenda. They want Scotland to be a vibrant Scotland. They want us to lead in the future.
Yeah.
Community education does so much. We help the people that need the help the most, the people that can't speak, the people that are too scared to leave their houses because they lack the confidence. I work with people I work in a prison, I work in the community, I work with adult literacy, people with literacy needs. I see them from the minute when they're too scared to come and meet me in a place of their own choosing. I listen to them embarrassed and mortified that they can't read, write, or whatever it is that they need to do to function in society. I work in the prison and going through the process of trying to build people up to engage in education because they think that they're stupid, they think they're not worthy, they can't do that. And we work with them for months and months to give them the confidence to say, you are somebody, you can do that, you can change. You removing it from the division from Strathclyde, I wouldn't be able to continue working. I'm a part-time student, this is my first year. Where I work, you have to have a degree to be able to continue working with them. That's why I've gone on the degree route. It wouldn't be worth my while staying with them because I can't go anywhere. I can't earn extra money to support my own family. I can't increase my knowledge. I can't go to another university because they've already got too many people applying to their courses. They can't accommodate us going to them. There's no way if this goes that I can finish my degree by 2015. It's impossible. There is no way I can do that. I'm going to lose, our profession will soon die because there'll be nobody there. If anybody leaves where I work, unless you've got a degree, you've not got a chance of working in community education or community learning and development.
2015, as I said right at the beginning, we will ensure that all students will be able to complete. That's a cast iron, public guarantee. We will ensure that.
Without being funny, people will leave, the staff will start leaving, they're not going to stay here when they've still got their careers to think about, they've got their families to consider. They're not going to, they may say we will stay to the end, but your chances of that are very unlikely because even in schools, when schools start merging, the teachers start leaving them schools because they're frightened they're going to lose their jobs and they need to support their own families, they need to keep working. And the same will happen here. It doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter what our values and beliefs are, we still have to survive as well.
Sure.
And we still would like to get our message across, and if we can't do it in Strathclyde, then they're going to go somewhere else where they are appreciated.
But I think mechanisms can be put in place, and there's experience on this to ensure that you can actually transit through a degree with no impact on the educational experience of students. And it's been done in other contexts, but in other universities and so on. And it's partly been done here in terms of I think it's a hotel and management where there was a closure of a whole area and then the redevelopment of that area across a number. So I think those transition issues, they are difficult.
But how would that happen though? Like, come 2015, the course is finished.
No. What we're actually saying here is that and what I want to go back to is what we're saying is we will ensure that the course is there for all the part-time students to run out. So you will complete your degree, whatever program you're on, the full-time or the part-time program, it will run out over that period of time.
But
and we will ensure.
That's incredibly difficult when you lose. You're not going to keep all the staff that are here at present. Over the years, the staff is going to need to dwindle.
There will be, yes, but we will ensure that we have a complement of staff to deliver the course as it is.
At the end of, come 2015, you're going to be left with students that are taking different modules because they've got so many modules left to get. So everybody's going to be taking different modules.
Yeah, but equally, I think there are ways to plan that, and what we will put in place is we will put a group in place which will include student representation on that group, probably from community education as well, to ensure that we have a proper plan in place to deliver the programme. So we will do that.
But what about the effect it's going to have on the rest of Scotland?
I think
There
that,
will be no provision for community education to degree standard covering the same aspects.
I think that's an interesting set of issues which has come up in consultation, and a set of issues that we were aware of and had discussions around in ADG, and that's something we're going to have to take back into, as Donald says, into the academic development group and think hard about that.
So as Strathclyde is a major provider of West Scotland, if anyone else wants to do this course, where do you suggest we go?
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Strathclyde is a major provider in the West of Scotland for community education. If anybody else wants to do this course, now they can't join, where would you suggest that we go?
Well, what I'm saying is that's something we have to take back into the academic development and think hard about it in the context of the criteria that we've actually used.
Yeah, I'd just like to back up that point by saying that the university have stated that there will be provision for all school leavers within Scotland or within this area in community education, but the government's figures actually state that over 50% of the people who do sit community education come to Strathclyde. Are you going to make provisions for these, or where are these funded places going to go from within the university? Are they going to another department, or are you going to obviously you're not going to give that money away to another university?
No.
What are you going to do about that?
Well, those student places will stay within the faculty. They'll stay within the faculty.
Just not for community education? Do you not think that's a bit short-sighted?
They will go to other areas which are growing rapidly.
But there are other areas which work directly with deprived communities, sociology, geography, things like that. Although they are social subjects, they're not necessarily subjects which are designed to train people to work within those. In all, in all respect, I would say that community education, if this is what this is about, has a very specialised bunch of skills and things that you come out with that you wouldn't get within the faculty. Just as a social.
I think that's one of the key points as well about saying that it's not necessarily, this is a representation obviously because we're all community educators and passionate, believe me, about the people that we work with, because we do work with the most deprived communities within Scottish society, and you're taking that resource away fundamentally. But more than that, it's not about pitting us against sociology or geography. It's not about horizontal violence at all. In fact, what it's about is saying that it's humanities and social sciences on the whole has taken such a hit from Strathclyde University that, to be honest, it becomes difficult to fathom how this can be done, because you're saying places are being maintained. As far as I can see, they'll be maintained in social work or teaching or journalism or English. They're the other sort of, I mean, where do they go though if there's no community education and there's no sociology or geography? Who's going to work with the people that we work with? Where are those gaps going to be filled? If the student places are still going to be kept in humanities, the humanities that are going to be left are not the ones that work in the areas or with the people that we work with.
But I think there's two separate issues here. One is about the student places, and one is actually about the provision within the profession.
Yeah.
I think in a sense they're kind of separate issues. I think the issue about provision within the profession is a very serious issue, and as I said, that's something that we'll take back into the academic development group. It's something we're aware of, but has become much more significant in the context of the consultation exercise which we've been undertaking, and that's why I'm saying the consultation exercise is genuine. So it will be taken back.
Just to make sure everyone gets their points, can I take?
I have two questions actually, Tony.
Sure.
I understand, going back to research, that you have research interest in democracy in a globalised world. Why then would you propose to cut our course, which encourages active citizenship in deprived communities, helps negotiate the effect of capitalism for young people, and enables local communities to craft development community assets? That's my first question.
Interesting question, because I'm in a role which I have to look after the interests of the whole faculty, and I believe that in the context of the discussions that we have, this is the best way forward for the faculty within the constraints that we operate. If we lived in a world where we had completely unfettered resources in terms of student numbers, in terms of all kinds of other resources, then there might be a different kind of discussion, but we actually don't. I also believe that within the faculty we educate all our students to participate fully within a democratic system. In other words, we in a sense, we educate them to be not just global citizens, but democratic citizens across the spectrum. And I would hope that, and that's a culture which is alive and strong in Scotland. It's something which I actually do admire. But equally, there are sets of issues which is within the faculty that we have to confront. So it's a tension between those things. And I think, if you like, life is like that. We hold values, sometimes those sit in tension with, if you like, the realities within which we have to operate. And we, in a sense, have to come to terms with that ethically, both ourselves, individually, and collectively. I don't think life is very easy. And if you look at kind of, you know, the philosophy of ethics, it's not simply that you can have a fully ethical life in one dimension.
My second question then is more from a personal point, from coming from a mature student background.
Yeah.
I myself came through the college network.
Yeah.
Obviously you're cutting down the course in Strathclyde, therefore you're limiting the places for the college applicants that are going to come through. As a mature student, I am unable to travel to Dundee or route to Edinburgh. Therefore, what's going to happen to the poor mature students who are coming through the college network, having been out of education for a number of years, return to education, can't go down the social work angle, just don't want to do that, they don't want to go down the education angle, but they want to do community education. What do you then say to us mature students who wish to take up education in our later years? What are you going to provide for us mature students? What places are going to be available for us? Because in your information it only states that school leavers, therefore you've given the age discrimination right away from the over 25 network. Stand up and we want to be counted. What are you going to do for us?
Well, we have access programs, for example, in relation
Access
to...
isn't good. Therefore, going
no, I mean, into our BA programs and so on. So I think there are other routes into education within Strathclyde.
But CV states that we must all have a degree by a certain time. Therefore, we must have a degree to get employment. Therefore, we want to stay at Strathclyde and be educated by our Strathclyde students, educated by our Strathclyde teachers or tutors.
Are you talking about you yourself personally within
not
this?
Not just myself, but any other mature student that's coming into education to be educated by education.
Sorry. I didn't think you were throwing out.
So going to places to be or Edinburgh, they can't operate and go to either of these. Where are they going to be educated to be studied in community education degree?
Do you mean, well, this goes back to the issue about provision and the kind of, you know, what I'm saying is that this is an issue, and we'll take it back to the academic development group. And it's interesting that it's registered. It's something that was on our agenda, but this you're registering it even more loudly. You're amplifying it. So.
I just had a question. You were talking about research, obviously, and how important it is.
Yeah.
And you're talking about you need to think about your priorities and where you can invest. And I think community education, we would all agree, is an area where you can invest, and you should make a priority. Our research essentially is about justice and helping the most deprived communities and helping the people who are at the bottom of the heap. So if you don't make this a priority, basically it's absolutely ridiculous, and you can't just say you're being democratic within our university, because there's a bigger world out there. There's Glasgow, do you know what I mean? There's Scotland, and there's the rest of the world that is a completely unjust place. And we're here doing research not for us and not to make money, but for the people who need it, and we're trying to do research to make sure there is better provision and that there are things in place, that people aren't living in complete poverty and people aren't living in the bottoms. I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, no, I think that's really genuine. I
Can I
accept
just
that.
ask, I mean, you're saying all these things and everything that you're saying here about working with deprived communities, people that are maybe scared, like you were saying, Sarah, about the prison, scared of approaching like from a learning perspective. Then it was recorded that you had said that the students would be graduating with a world-class degree. Now, how can you say that if you're making proposals to cut this course? How can you say it's so good, but we're just going to do away with it?
Because, in a sense, it comes back to the issue about priorities. All our degrees are world-class.
You're talking about human beings and society and...
Well, with respect, you were talking about degree. I accept, I have no issue with the fact that community education is about social justice and so on. So is education, and my colleagues in education will say, make me a priority because we're engaged in struggles for social justice and so on.
Jobs and there isn't any jobs?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I'm saying how there's a whole bunch of people leaving university with teaching degrees and they can't get a job.
haven't been able to get full-time jobs for the last, what, 5-6 years?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're still
Plowing
funding
out.
this course, people are still attending it, and
With a skeleton staff.
But there's always
So
provision
But-
for community education.
Well, that may be an issue, I think.
Well, community education picks up with people that school never worked for, where they're
Yeah.
not engaging, even the teenagers that don't engage in school, it's community education that picks that up. People, like the people that are in prison that would want to engage in the colleges
Yeah.
that are within prison,
Sure.
they're the people that pick that up and help them build themselves up till they're ready to say, yeah, well actually I can go to college or I can go and do this.
Yeah.
But for the rest of Scotland, you're going to lose that. You're just going to end up with more and more people disengaging the education and the communities, and it will have a knock-on effect to societies.
If we can take Stacey next.
Yeah, just following on from what was just said,
Yeah.
in the proposal it states that education is important. So why cut community education when we deal with young people, adults and school communities, unlike school teachers who only deal with people that are in school? So what makes you say that one sort of education is more important than another, especially since lifelong learning is part of government policy?
Because it comes back to, if you like, the whole thrust of what we were doing in the academic development group was to look at our research, to strengthen our research profile and to strengthen those areas which are strong in research and are going to deliver in that sense for the faculty and for the university. So it's actually something which is strategic in that sense. So it's not about, in that sense saying, well, is teacher education better than community education? Because I don't think you wanted to pose it in that particular necessarily.
I think you had a point at the back.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was just going to say, when you say you can come across the education, school education is far more important. The community education, well from us, community education, we work with schools, we work with social workers, you meet the gap, we work with, as all my colleagues have already said, we work with the kids who don't go to school, therefore why cut our course?
Well, I come back to, I'm just going to, in a sense, repeat the arguments that I've used. I think I've laid out the rationale. You may not accept it, and I accept that, but I've laid out the rationale, and this isn't actually about judgment about the work that community education does. The great work that it does in the community is not a judgment about that. So I think there's a kind of misperception if you think that, community education has been either unfairly targeted or specifically targeted because of the work that it does in terms of social justice. I think there's a lot of people across the faculty do a huge amount of work in terms of social justice. I can name, for example, the law clinic, who actually provide a whole range of advice for people within the community in Glasgow to deal with the legal positions that they find themselves in and so on. So this isn't actually about the faculty disengaging from the local community or the national community or even the global community. This is actually a question about our broader strategic priorities. So there will still be that engagement, but it will be in other areas in the faculty. And I think this is the difficult thing to articulate. And I don't expect you to accept it, because I expect you to defend community education, and I expect you to defend your clients and to defend the people that you work with. I wouldn't expect any less. But I think there's a difference then of opinion between us, in some senses, about, if you like, what we think is in the best interest of the faculty. And I suspect we won't ever agree on that. But please, take it out. This is not a comment on community education in that sense. And I think that may be some of the misperception.
It's also about finance, though.
Well, finance is one part of it, but that's not the driving force, is made clear in the proposal.
Do you have the figures, though, in terms of finance, about what? Have you made those available to?
I think the financial
figures. I thought we'd ask the staff about getting the figures, and they seem to, because in the proposal it says that the financial profile indicated a structural deficit and raised concerns about the sustainability and viability of the current configuration of activities. But have those figures are those figures public? What financial figures they're based on?
I think those are the financial figures that are going out on the.
They'll go out to staff later on today.
Along with comparative figures for the rest of the faculty? No.
No. because as I said, you have to go back to the methodology we use. We focused upon those areas.
So they can only fight their own course. They have no way of refuting.
But the issue is about the finances on the course, not in relation to others, because as the faculty has made clear, finance is not, if you like, the critical factor here.
But it specifically says in the proposal, community education has reported a significant deficit.
Yeah, that's right.
So it must be just about community education.
Exactly. Yeah.
So but they can't then use that in relation to other courses at all. So it's just the figures they're getting today, because that was what we were wondering. So I haven't seen the figures.
You have to look at the proposal as,
you know,
proposal has a number of criteria, if you like, has a number of areas in it which we looked at. And finance was one, but it wasn't. It's never been the determining factor, because we've always made clear in the faculty that there are some things which probably would never make money, but we want to do them because they're central to research, they're central to our excellence, and so on, and they're central to our future. So I think, you know, we need to be clear about that.
So basically, community education is losing money and doing no research that's worth anything for the university. Bottom line.
No, it's not. It's not. I think you put it far too boldly in that sense. Those are some of the issues. I wouldn't put it in that way, and I think you do a disservice to the staff if you put it in that way. I've not commented.
Staff know I wouldn't do them a disservice.
No, but I think
that it's hardly fair to get the service to defend themselves when they can't compare to another service on exactly the same criteria. That really isn't, because there may be other departments that they're unaware of that are more or less at the same level as them, and they can't defend themselves because
but it goes back. I think it goes back to
it seems a bit selective.
No, it goes back to the if you like, the key method which we used was actually look at all those areas which were poorly performing. The other areas aren't. That's the distinguishing feature.
We're meant to trust that you are telling us the truth, that everybody else is hunky-dory and choose that in these areas that are doing badly,
because all
where
that
we can't actually see, well actually, yeah, we believe you because we can see that the other departments are doing really well in them areas, or they may not be so good in that one, but that one makes up for it. They can't do that. They're just getting told, here you go, this is what's wrong, defend yourself without having any other information. That is not fair.
But those,
that's
if you like, the criteria, the RE criteria, okay, are actually all publicly available.
I'm not saying that though, but you're asking the departments to defend themselves when they have no other information relating to any other departments in which they can base their defence on, because they don't know how the other departments are doing.
I don't think that's entirely true, because at the time of the merger, all the kind of the managers in every area would have been seen the whole range of information which was suggesting where the areas of strength were and where the areas which were less strong were. And at that time that was published quite widely across. I don't know if it was published to every member of staff, but certainly to the managers of, you know, the areas of activity. So again, that information was available at the time, which is what, as Tony's saying, spurred this process, identified the areas which were performing in this lower quartile, and that's been the trigger for the whole ADR process.
That you're being very selective with what you're saying, and it feels like you're withholding information, not giving people a fair chance. When people are asking questions, you're not necessarily answering the full. Somebody said to me, it's not financial, and it becomes financial, but it's not financial. It's like it either is or it isn't. There's no bit in between.
Well, I think it's more complicated than that. It's a set of criteria, and we're making a judgment overall.
Okay, there's some people that we might want to make some points for a while, so I just want to make sure we get through all them. If we could take you in.
I just have a question to say that if you're fundamentally saying it is about research that you're basing all this on, is there anything that we can do during this consultation to change your mind if we've already decided that the research isn't up to standard?
Provide us with information we've already got.
Yeah, but as students, we can't really provide you with research.
That's up to staff. It's up to staff, and they already have it.
Right. So, is there anything that we can obviously engage with yourselves in to help you make a more informed decision? Because it seems to me that you've already made your decision on it.
No, we haven't made our decision. As I said at the beginning, there's already a range of issues which we will take back to ADG, which we are aware of, but have become much more visible in the consultation exercise. And I don't think you'd be sat here now if you thought that, if you like, there wasn't any point in consultation, because I think you're really committed to the course that you're on. So I think that, yes, there is. The very things that you've been saying are very helpful. The responses we've had by email, the responses that we've had from, for example, people from the YMCA, people from outside in the professional area, community education and so on, have raised or reinforced the numbers of issues. We will have to take all that into account.
I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't all going to be based on the research point that wasn't.
We have to go back and make judgments on this. We're making a judgment overall. So we'll have to go back as that academic development group and say to ourselves, as you would do in any review process, did we miss anything? Did we miss anything significant here? Is there something here which would change our interpretation of the evidence we've used? Is there new evidence? Are there new sets of issues which we didn't consider? In the same way you do that in any review process. And then we've got to make a judgment. So that's why I'm saying that the consultation process is a genuine one in that sense. And the things that you've said have reinforced things.
Do you not think all that should have been spoke about and clarified with each one of you before you decided to put that as a proposal that community education would be scrapped?
But we
You
did.
should know everything?
No, I mean, you've got to understand, we did that, and that's the judgment we came to at that point. That's the whole point of a consultation process, is to send it out then. The proposal goes out to all those who are affected to actually provide feedback on that proposal and to say, well, maybe you misinterpreted this, maybe you missed this piece of evidence, or so on and so on. So that, I mean, otherwise, in a sense, it'd be a decision, and it's not a decision. That's the whole point. And this is a formal process of consultation.
I'd just like to ask a question. Obviously, this consultation has been going on for a couple of weeks now, and we, as students, haven't been heavily involved in it in terms of discussing it with people higher up in the university or whatever. I just want to ask, what are you doing for us as our dean? That you should be supporting us, and you should be what?
It shouldn't be about the financing as our dean. Should you not be supporting the fact that maybe our course is worthwhile?
I just want to know how we're being represented at these meetings that we're not able to attend, we're not allowed to be at just because we're students. I want to know how we're represented.
I'm not sure which meetings you're referring to. You mean?
I'm sure you've had discussions that we have not, none of us have been able to.
I wonder if there's a kind of misperception here that this may be a university decision, because it's not the decision that's been taken, it's a decision by the faculty. So I mean, there has been stuff, I think, in the press suggesting, for example, that the principal is, sort of disinvesting from the humanities and social sciences. And that's actually not the case. The faculty we're working within certain parameters, and it's the faculty that made that decision, and it's up to us then to report that decision to the Senate and to court ultimately to make that final decision.
I mean, let's be clear on process. What the consultation is about is then the group that are looking at these proposals has to go back then and review those proposals and either make further proposals, amendments, or whatever. Those proposals then have to go back to the Board of Studies, which is the Board of Studies within the faculty, which has representation on it from all areas. It has to then go to the Senate, and the Senate has a discussion on those proposals, and it then has to go to court. The decision-making body isn't the faculty. The decision-making body isn't the Senate, it's actually the university court. The university court makes any final decisions on issues about, if you like, discontinuation of courses and so on and so on. So I think that's where there could be some confusion.
Is there anyone who hasn't made a point who would like to ask a question? Just anyone who's not spoken so far, just to make sure that everyone has their chance to speak. Anyone else want to make any points?
I think one of the things though that has occurred to me throughout is that community education as a subject, I know that you're trying to make a very clear differentiation between the university and the kind of field of practice, but they are unbelievably linked, obviously, seeing as the students that come out of here are professional community workers, and on that basis are the ones. So I think it's kind of hard to make that clear dichotomy, because it's not as easy as that, obviously. But on the same level, that's just kind of a side point. But one of the points that if you go up to the community education department, or if you look at all the students, probably nearly everyone that's sitting here, a lot of them aren't traditional students. Now, I want to know, where is there going to be the places for non-traditional students? The reason that community education, and there has been so many people from the field getting annoyed about this and everything else, is because a lot of the people that are coming through that are non-traditional students. My research is working with youth gang members, I have a young guy who has got so many stabs over his body, it would frighten you. That young guy has now been brought in to be a community worker. He's now a youth worker with other young people within the East End of Glasgow. He has went to a college course and is in the final years of completing his college course in youth and community work. Where does that young boy, who has changed his whole life, his whole thing is he's the most non-traditional student in the world, he had his hopes set on coming to Strathclyde University to be a community educator, because he is doing community education of practice within his community. The difference that young man is making. Now, you turn around to a young man like that and tell him, well, you could go and do social work. That's not a degree, that's not the sort of degree necessarily, and I'm not saying that in a kind of, again, horizontal violence way. I'm just making a point that community education, bring in the non-traditional students that come from communities of deprivation, but also go back into those communities, educated from a good institution. They go back into those communities and make a huge difference. And so by taking away this course, not only are you taking away the opportunities for these young people to get tertiary educated in a good institution, but you're taking away the capabilities of those young people to go back into the community and make a lasting and sustainable difference, which I'm sure this university should be committed to.
I think that's a very powerful statement. It's a very powerful statement.
Just in line with what Sinead was saying, me myself, I come from an area that in 2006 was classified as the most deprived area in Britain. I failed school with flying colours, gone A+, A+ and fail. And I got involved in drugs, got involved in alcohol, fought quick sight. And then I met a community worker who actually had a degree from Strathclyde University in community education. And he helped me and got me through that. I then went back to education in 2003, like 8 years after I left school. I went back and I'd done HNC college. I'd done an NC first and then HNC. But if I hadn't done that,
the HNC?
College.
Yeah.
So if I hadn't met that community worker and done that, there's no way I'd be in education. I'm going to get my basic degree this year. But if I hadn't met him, I'd been over just now. I would probably be dead just now. So community workers are really important and we don't need them out there.
That's a fair point.
I think with everyone's...
Yeah, it's been very helpful.
Cool. Is there any closing statements that anyone wants to make?
I just thank you for your frankness, the way you brought issues to our attention.
And thank you for your time.
Very good.
Yeah, thanks to everyone for coming along, and thanks to staff members for coming along to hear the issues of everyone. Just to let everyone know, this is not the end. As you all know, we've got badges. The campaign is ongoing. I'm sure all of you are aware of the Sussex Town on Facebook and Twitter. Keep up to date. We've got confirmation that the demo's happening on Friday now. We'll chat to you about this afterwards. I can chat to you afterwards if you want to come along and maybe speak to you about tonight at 5:30, if anyone's able to, 6:30, sorry, if anyone's able to come along. Okay?
Why is the date changed?
Just because there were some issues around.
Well, maybe it's changed, maybe it hasn't, you know.
All right. Sorry.
Okay, well, you guys
Sounds very postmodern to me.
I wish. That's the pain in the arse.
Okay, it's just going to stick around afterwards and we'll explain it in a second. Sorry, I'm getting confusing text. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
These are for us.
Yeah.
Friday.
Hey guys, so yeah, we've been checking out the weather forecast for Thursday and it's looking like torrential. Oh yeah.
I was like, torrential. Oh yeah.
Where is it? There.